Hello, and welcome to the Security Industry Association Vertical Insight Symposium on Public Transportation Security. I'm Ron Hawkins, Senior Director of Industry Relations for SIA. The Security Industry Association is the leading trade association for physical security technology businesses. We have more than 1,600 corporate members, including manufacturers, integrators, service providers, distributors, dealers, and others. We provide a variety of government relations, learning and development, technical standards, networking, and other resources and services to our members, all of which can be found on our website at securityindustry.org. And we are the premier sponsor of the ISC West and ISC East trade shows and conferences. As ridership on public transportation continues to recover following a severe drop during the pandemic, security remains a persistent and growing challenge. Transit systems across the United States must protect millions of people and billions of dollars in vehicles and infrastructure every day from criminals, vandals, and even terrorists. During the next 90 minutes, we'll take a closer look at how transit operators and security solutions providers are leveraging technologies and policies to protect riders. Please remember during the event that we welcome your questions. So if you have anything that you'd like to ask our presenters or any comments that you would like to offer, please make use of the Q&A icon on the bottom of your screen. Also, we will be posting a recording of this event on the SIA website. I do want to thank our sponsor, Preferred Technologies, or PrefTech, an integrator that serves multiple vertical markets, including, obviously, public transportation. Check them out at preftech.com. That's PREF-TECH.com. Our first presenter is Armando Leon, Senior Security Manager for the Metropolitan Transit Police Department under the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. In this position, he helps manage and oversee a security operation consisting of more than 500 armed and unarmed security officers in 3 jurisdictions, Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia. Armando previously worked as the Director of Security for the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., and before that as a police officer in Miami-Dade County. He served in the U.S. Army with the 3rd Infantry Division during the initial invasion of Iraq in 2003, and he continues to serve as a Master Sergeant in the District of Columbia National Guard, where he is Assistant State Inspector General. Armando, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thanks, Ron. I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me. SIA, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think this is a great topic. Transit, public transportation is very important. If you live in large cities, specifically like ours, you know that, it's definitely the heart of the city and how most of our employees get to work. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, Ron, let me know if you could see that.
Yep, looks good.
Okay. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Again, Ron, thank you. SIA, thank you. Just a little introduction about me. I put it on there, although Ron already went through it. I think with Metro, I've been for about 3 years. I really enjoy working for Metro. It's a challenging environment. It's a very busy environment. It changes every day. So it's something that I really enjoy. It really has given me the opportunity to expand my security experience and really dive into other aspects of security so that we can, improve the safety of our metro system and our people. Today, I really talk about some things, really of our security structure of our teams, of what Metro does. We'll talk a little bit about crime. I really don't want to focus on crime too much. I just want to give data so we could see a change in crime as we've implemented these security plans. We'll talk about security plan. I'll talk a little bit and share a little bit of data. We track everything that's being done by security personnel. Of course, MTPD tracks crime and criminal activity as police departments do, but I think we go a little bit above and beyond for security department in things that we track just to ensure that we are utilizing our resources the best as possible. Obviously, with everything, there are challenges. So we'll talk about some challenges, some things that we've done to overcome these challenges with this new plans of security within the transit. Talk a little bit about changes in crime and how that's impacted in a positive way, and obviously plan for the future as to what it looks like as we continue to move forward. So security structure here at WMATA, like I said, I work for WMATA under the Department of Metro Transit. Metro Transit is a full-fledged police department. Obviously, their police officers handle crime. They do, calls for service. They focus on law enforcement activities. We have a proprietary security team, so we're divided into two, right? So we have a proprietary security team. We have a contract security force. Our proprietary security team is rather small. That helps manage the entire operation. Our proprietary security team conducts TVAs, threat vulnerability assessments, physical inspections of our stations. We're also in charge of security for construction projects prior to build and during the build. We input information about security, cameras, access control. We also manage access control for WMATA's entire operation, so all locations WMATA. We also have a contingency of WMATA special police officers. So these are special police officers in the District of Columbia that work for Washington Metro. They're employees of Washington Metro. Um, then we have a large contracted security force. I think the last numbers, we were just over 400 of the contracted security force, just under 100 of the WMATA Special Police, plus our proprietary security team. So we're rather a large security department within Metro Transit. And then, of course, the biggest part of what protects the trains and the transit system is Metro Transit Police. Like I said, full-fledged police department. I think there's just under 400 officers that cover all stations, buildings, yards, everything WMATA. I'll talk a little bit about crime. And as Ron mentioned, as we get out of COVID, we tried to increase ridership within the district. As a public method of transportation, of course, we survive on revenue, right? That's what we live off of. So we need people to utilize our systems. We provide that service. We need people to come. One of the things that we found specifically as we came out of COVID, people's concern for safety within the transit system, right? That was a big deal for WMATA. That was a big deal for the chief of police, making sure that people felt safe. And I think there was a feeling that people weren't feeling as safe on the metro. If you've ridden the metro in DC, you know that it is a happening metro transit system, right? There's a lot of activity in certain areas and throughout the entire system. So that is definitely I guess a proponent of people riding the train or not, right? So we'll look a little bit about what it looked like, prior to us implementing our main security plan that we work off now. And these are statistics from 2023. As you can see, numbers were pretty high for 2023. I highlighted the excuse me, the auto theft portion, honestly, because that was a year where auto theft started to increase significantly within the district. One of the things that hurt us, obviously, was if anybody who's in the business knows that Hyundai it had a problem with their technology where it was very easy, and they're still working on it, to access their vehicles and turn on their vehicles, especially with a push start. So that increased auto thefts within the district, and increased auto theft. Honestly, the reason we track it because, of course, WMATA has parking garages, parking lots, and this is what was affecting us quite significantly in 2023, which caused us to kind of increase security and help MTPD. Because, like I said, even though MTPD is a full-fledged police department, they are a police department. They're handling police activity, responding to crime and criminal activities. They don't always have the time to focus on security itself, right? So, from there, we thought in WMATA and Metro Transit thought on how to develop a security plan that was going to help reduce crime, help reduce, these auto thefts, help reduce this criminal activity, make people feel safe on the metro, increase ridership, and then really tackle the crime levels that we had, 2022 just coming out of COVID, 2023 as they increased and ridership increased. So we definitely needed to think about how to create a plan for that. As we all know, all police departments, the majority of them are short-staffed. MTPD is no exception to that. Definitely a short-staffed department. I think the majority of departments in the area, have you seen, are providing hiring bonuses just to get people to come and get employed by them. So it's definitely a challenge for just the police department to handle everything. So, our plan was to leverage an already established security contract. So our large security contract was already expanding. Our initial security contract focused on our administrative building. Those familiar with Metro know we had a building downtown in DC, the JGB building, which was our admin building. That's basically where the contract to security force was at, as well as our revenue collection facility. When JGB closed down, we expanded the 3 buildings. So we expanded security. So security was already expanding. So the thought was, well, how can we proactively attack the criminal activity that's going on in the stations, helping people feel safe, utilizing our security contract. So, through crime data, through statistics that we've had, obviously Metro Transit follows, we decided on a certain number of stations to staff. I think we're up to 26 stations where we staff armed DCSPOs at the stations to help provide that presence. So, armed DCSPOs walking these platforms, showing presence, and providing this extra additional deterrence to crime was kind of the direction that we wanted to go. As we started this pilot program of having them on the platforms, then we additionally started thinking about, well, there's a lot of criminal activity that's happening or starting within the trains themselves. So how do we also place SPOs on the trains, on the platforms, and manage that to kind of reduce crime in a significant way? So we developed a plan where, those of you, anybody has written the Metro lately, you may have seen them, of course, specifically within the District of Columbia. We have officers that patrol, armed SPOs that patrol the platforms, and then we have armed SPOs that are riding the trains. Now, these armed SPOs are literally just riding the trains. We have a plan for them, right, from each station, how many stations they ride. They come back and they do this for the entire shift. We are there from opening to close, Monday through Sunday, and they do this to deter any criminal activity, and they certainly help quite a bit, right? There's a lot of, and we'll get to that data in a minute, but they're definitely a force that is helping MTPD as I guess we would say, a force multiplier, an augmentation to their criminal plans, right? Then the other thing that we tried, excuse me, the other thing that we implemented was, as we dealt with the criminal activity and the theft of vehicles within the parking garages and parking lots, we decided that it was obviously important to place security patrols in there to kind of decrease that activity and reduce the auto thefts. And then, as we thought of this plan and we developed it, you have to think that this is not something that's usual for a security personnel to do, not within this area, right? There's not a lot of places within the DMV where a security officer is going to literally get involved in these criminal activities and deterring and actually stopping, arresting, and conducting basically law enforcement activities, right? So we had to provide additional training, right? That's definitely something that's very important. Anybody that's familiar with DCSPOs knows that there's a very minimal level of training that's required for them to get a license within the District of Columbia. And then they send them on their way and they put them on posts. And that's definitely something that, that was on top of our mind, because knowing that the limited training that they get we were going to need to have them basically be a small law enforcement force, right, within the District of Columbia. SPOs or special polices within District of Columbia have a little bit more authority than security officers. They do have arresting authorities within the jurisdiction that they're at. They're a little bit more, I guess, have a little bit more authority than a regular security officer, but they don't get that much training that provides them the ability to get to do this. So we had to definitely come up with additional training for them so that we can utilize them as a force multiplier. So by placing them on the platforms, by placing them on the trains, this was definitely something that was going to help kind of reduce that criminal activity, push that crime down, and make people feel safe, increasing our ridership, right? Obviously, with everything, there are some different challenges, right? And I think I talked a little bit about challenges in a training portion, but it is a contract security program, right? So, anybody who's dealt with a contract security company understands, how that relationship works, right? Contract security with clients, there's initial contract and there's things that change these contracts. So that's definitely something that, we had to navigate carefully as to what we were going to ask the contract security personnel to do. And then the other thing is, within a contract security force, as a client perspective, right, on a contract, they don't technically work for us. So it's challenging or overcoming that challenge on how to ensure that we are getting the service that we ask for on an everyday basis, right? So it's definitely one of those contracts that is not, and I see these a lot, and we've seen this a lot, and I have some experience as a consultant, and I saw this a lot. What we used to call sign and forget contracts, right? Where somebody would be assigned the security contract in an organization. They might not have that much experience with security. They would sign the contract and just expect the contract security company to do their job, and that was really the only involvement they have. We on within WMATA Metro Transit, we definitely have a very deep dive, I guess, control or involvement within the security contract to ensure that they're providing what we're asking for, right? Because as you could see, as you can imagine, we're in the public eye quite a bit. This definitely increased security being in the public eye. And we constantly get, people love taking pictures, putting it on Twitter, sending it to the GM. So this was something that we definitely had to be on top of 100%. Of course, again, I mentioned it before, was training for security personnel. SPOs in the district, we all know they get very little training. It's just the reality of it. They try to put as many people as they can out there, kind of augment MPD. So that was definitely a challenge, right? Because we do have to, again, that all goes back to being a contract and then additional training, as we all know, dealing with security companies, it costs money. So we had to definitely come up with different unique ways on how to increase the training and focus it around the different challenges that they're going to be facing on a day-to-day basis. And then, of course, something that everyone deals with are staffing issues, and this is a across the board problem that we've had, and specifically coming out of COVID, it's been a very challenging thing to keep staff and keep personnel. Security, specifically within the district, I would say that people move around a lot. I would say some contracts can be revolving doors. And then, something to think about, as a DCSPO comes in to work for WMATA, work for Metro, they get placed on the platform, and it's definitely something that they've never seen before and they've never done before, right? Because now they're on a platform, for 10, 12 hours per day, and they're dealing with criminal activity. They're dealing with, personnel that are fare evading. They're dealing with the homeless population. They're dealing with robberies and shootings at times. So they're dealing with a lot of things that you would typically not see within a building in DC, let's say, in a typical post for an SPO within a district, right? So that's definitely what causes staffing issues. So that's definitely a constant challenge, right? It's a significantly large contract. you know, again, like I said, we are just under 400. So we're staffing it as best as we can, but that is a constant problem that we have, and we see it. And we see it with Metro Transit Police as well, which is one of the reasons why, utilizing security to help kind of decrease that crime and augment them was definitely a solution for it. Uh, I would say experience is another challenge, that we've come up with, because there's a difference in experience within law enforcement personnel and security personnel. Obviously, there's a significant difference. Some security personnel want to be police officers, but they just don't have that experience and ability yet. Right. So we don't get that from security. So it's a little different. It's a little challenging. Again, it goes all back to training, because they're seeing different things. They're seeing criminal activity that they normally don't. They're getting involved in uses of force. One of the things that they're getting involved with a lot is they're seeing our medical situations. As we know, the opioid epidemic within our nation has not decreased. Obviously, we see it quite a bit of that within the metro. So it's something that, there are hands-on on the metro stations basically, every day, 7 days a week, 365. And like I said, in order for us to provide, you know, great service to Metro, right, and how to great service to the people, we have to make sure that we are getting and we are having our security teams do what it is that we're asking for. And we got to see how that's impacting crime, right? So we do manage a lot of data. We track a lot. Everything that SPOs do within the platforms, within the trains. We definitely track that quite a bit. I'll go over some of the tracking data. Mind you, I've taken some of the wording off just because it's proprietary information. We just want to keep it that way. But it'll at least give you kind of an overview on how we track this data and how we keep this data to ensure that we're adjusting as needed. Right. So if you can see here, this is 2025. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, this was, and I apologize for the title, but this one is 2024. And this is the number of incidents that the security personnel were involved in within 2024. And the majority of these are at our stations and on our trains. As you can see, it is a very active environment. I think at the end of 2024, we were just over 2,000 incidents that they handled, maybe 2,500 incidents, I think it was, that they handled, which it doesn't seem like a lot, but that's 2,500 incidents that there was somebody on scene at the moment the criminal activity or the medical situation was occurring, which means that it helped with that delay of law enforcement and or emergency medical services, right? We all know that a crime happens, somebody calls 911, MTPD or law enforcement may be 5-10 minutes away. It's going to take that time, whereas these SPOs are on scene at the time this incident occurred. So this is a significant number of incidents that they've impacted, based on them being in that location, right? So with this data, as you can see, we could see where the highest hits are in each location, and that helps us adjust our security force placement and our riding plans, right? Because we have to make sure that they are in the places where they are needed the most. So we can use this data to do that. We also use this data to help us increase our training, right? And focus our training so that we can, attack and really focus on the incidents that they're going to be handling. So that helps us quite a bit on that. And this is location. I'll go again. This is 2024, and I apologize for the date on the top. But this is 2024. These are type of incidents. So again, this is really where it helps us dive down as to determining what it is that these SPOs are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and how do we improve that training so that these incidents are handled in a different manner, right? So medical emergencies, I would say, Narcan is a big thing within the District of Columbia. SPOs utilize that on a daily basis. CPR, AED, These are perishable skills, right? So if you're not utilizing them all the time, you get trained every 2 years. Or these guys are hands-on, day to day. So we make sure that we focus on that. Some of the other things that we focus on is obviously radio training, something that most SBOs within the District of Columbia don't see. Most security personnel don't utilize the radio with an actual communication center where they communicate to a police dispatcher. So we definitely focus a lot on that. And again, we track it. I left the days on there just because obviously you could figure it out. It was 7 little lines. But we also track days and how crimes occur within specific days so that we can up our staffing on specific days and move them to the specific locations that they're being impacted throughout those days. So that's definitely something that's helped us focus security and move and adjust, right? This is definitely a moving target, not just because the title of this conference is a moving target as a train, but the criminal activity has always been a moving target, right? So how do we adjust our security force so that we can target the criminal activity that's happening in different locations and even specifically on different days? The other thing that we do is like I said, we ride trains. We track how the SBOs are riding trains and how many trains they're riding. You can see here, 2024, that's a full year. 2025, that's up to now, as of 2 days ago. So we definitely track where there are, which trains they're riding to kind of adjust based, where the criminal activity is happening, where the incidents they're involved happening. Those of you that probably looked at the previous data for location, looking at the train rides, you can kind of take a guess as to where the highest activity is happening. So we could use that data to adjust and place these personnel in the correct places. So, all of this is done painstakingly every day by our small team to make sure that we're providing the best service for WMATA and for the people of the District of Columbia. So we'll talk just a little bit of reduction in crime, and this has a little bit of I guess, a comparison between years. This is up to date as of 2 days ago. So you'll see a little bit of change. Those have been keeping track with the news. We are significantly lower in crime than we have been in the past. I think we are the lowest crime we have been in 7 years. And that's through a lot of things, right? I wouldn't say that's definitely all through security. I think security has been a causation as well. But I think MTPDs and the chief's plan on how, we tackle law enforcement within Metro, within transit, has helped reduce this crime. This is 2023, 2024 numbers. As you can see, 2024, we saw a significant number of criminal activity. Again, I highlighted the auto theft. You could see, even though Hyundai still has those issues with their technology, we are definitely helping in reducing that crime, which is definitely how we utilize security and moving them from place to place to kind of adjust to reduce that crime. And then we'll go to 2024, 2025 year to date. And as you can see, as we are in July, numbers are significantly lower than they were already in 2024. And we are definitely tracking down, even though ridership is rising, right? We all know that at the beginning of the year, January, February timeframe, people were now being told that they have to go into work. So if you've written the Metro within the past couple of months, you'll know that the Metro has increased significantly in ridership, but we continue to track down in criminal activity. So it's definitely not our dip in crime is definitely not because there was less people on the trains. It was definitely because of the fact that we are implementing all these different security plans along with law enforcement plans to help reduce this crime. And as you can see, again, 2025 year to date, significantly lower than it was in 2024. And we're probably going to stay much, much lower than we were in 2024 towards the end of the year. And again, year to date, this is year to date, 2025, 2024. As you can see, we are already 25% lower than we were last year in 2024. So we're definitely tracking to be a significant lower than we were in 2024 based on these numbers. As we plan for the future, What do we see security do within the trains? Definitely the stations is something that's probably going to stay. The trains is something that's going to stay. There might be an increase. It was a pilot program that the GM implemented to see how this would impact crime and how it would help. And we've got nothing but positive review. Obviously, there are pockets of things that go wrong, but for the most part, is a positive plan, and it's definitely working. Um, Definitely specialized training. This is something that's different, something that's not commonly done by security personnel. This is not training that they are prepared for. The majority, again, of security personnel are in buildings or booths or, conducting perimeter checks. Not all of them are dealing with stabbings and shootings and suicide attempts within the train. So it's definitely something that is in our future as we prepare for different contracts as we move forward after these next couple of years. And then, of course, increased collaboration both with Metro Transit Police and other law enforcement agencies. Right, we work hand in hand with Metro Transit quite a bit. So increasing that collaboration, increasing that training is definitely something that's making this security force a little bit different from others and kind of making it better for the future as we continue with these plans. And honestly, that's all I have. And I want to thank again Ron and SIA for bringing me on and letting me share some of the tactics and some of the security plans that we conduct to help keep the people in DC safe.
All right, thanks, Armando. Really appreciate that. Great information. As I mentioned, as we've talked leading up to this symposium, I live in the DC area. I ride Metro, and I personally have noticed a big difference in terms of just the overall feeling of security within the past year and a half. So it's really interesting to see that the numbers bear out that sense that I have had, and interesting to hear how you've achieved that, which is really impressive.
Yeah, thank you.
But all right, so we do have a question here. So I know you said you took some of the labels off some of the charts there, but I'll read the question and give you a chance to respond. They ask, can you give a broad classification slash categorization of what types of incidents were reported and that impacted the organization?
So yeah, so if I go talk about back to the criminal activity that we get from MTPD, I did leave that data up there. I would say that we see pretty much everything, right? The transit system, you don't realize how busy transit is and how busy DC is until you actually work there. And you realize how much criminal activity actually occurs. But I would say that we see just a little bit of everything, right? We see a lot of criminal activity that happens, I would say, in the district and then spills onto the transit because they utilize transit as a means of transportation. Things that start outside and finish on the transit. I would say fights we see quite a bit. Juvenile activity is happening. So MTPD has implemented a truancy plan during school hours to kind of get school age kids off the metro during school hours. So we definitely implemented that, and we've seen a decline in juvenile criminal activity. But that is something that had spiked, late last year, and in 2023, we were trying to attack it. And I would say the other thing that happens a lot, and people really sometimes don't think about this, are medical situations, right? Medical situations on the train. As we get into the summer months, it gets hotter. People come from other states. They don't drink enough water. They don't realize the humidity level here in DC. They may pass out. And again, like I said, the opioid epidemic is live and well, and we see that quite a bit. So that's definitely something that impacts the organization quite a bit.
All right, thanks for that. Now, I know Metro did install the new fare gates over the past year or two. I think they're in all the stations now. How big of an impact would you say that has had?
So I think it had a significant impact, right? I mean, I will say that, those determined to evade the fare will continue to evade the fare, but it's definitely reduced the number of people that do fare evade. We still get a lot that jump it. They'll jump it, they'll break it, they'll hold it, but it's definitely not as easy as it was before to just stepping over it. The other thing, obviously, that's happened is, the criminalization of fare evading within some of the states, right? And then really the fare evasion uh, plan that MTPD has enforced, right? Where you'll see MTPD officers detailed specifically to help that fare evasion, which is definitely was hurting Metro quite significantly. So I would say a combination of all has impacted quite a bit. Again, the fare evasion was significantly easier prior to those large doors being placed there.
Right. And one last question before we go. Can you talk a little bit more about any other uses of technology that you've implemented, whether it's video surveillance or any other access controls or whatever comes to mind that you think has had a significant impact?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, Metro has a significantly large video surveillance plan, right? We have cameras in all stations. We have cameras in the actual metros. As you ride the newer metros, the 7000s, you'll see that they're much nicer. They have a lot of cameras on there. Those are very, very useful for us. Our video team is active and live. So what's good about that is that when an incident occurs, we have a specific team that's just focusing on videos and they can pull up the incident occurring at that moment. So video is definitely something that we utilize quite a bit. Access control, of course, throughout the entire authority, we do have digital access control with HID cards, which is managed by MTPD in our office itself. So we definitely have those that are helping quite a bit within security. And then, as we look to the future and tracking the performance from the security personnel, we are definitely looking into utilizing technology, on how to track those train rides, how to track that activity. So there's definitely a plan moving forward, because currently we do everything manually, and that's for many reasons, but definitely it's heading in that direction.
Right. All right. Great stuff. All right. Thank you once again. We'll let you go, but definitely appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and share these insights.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Armando. Take care. All right. Now I'd like to invite our next panelists to go ahead and turn on their cameras, David and Javier, and we'll move into our next session. So here we have the opportunity to hear from another practitioner and as well as their integrator partner. And I'll ask each of them to introduce themselves, starting with Javier.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Javier Trilla. I am the Vice President of Innovation and IT here at Denton County Transportation Authority. We are a small to medium-sized transit agency just north of Dallas. So we connect with Dallas Area Rapid Transit and our partners over at Trinity Metro in West and Fort Worth. Just a big regional system, all interconnected. I've been at the agency for a little over 11 years now. I have oversight over all things technology. I have innovation, operational technology, and more recently, even though this is probably not as traditional as you might think, I have oversight over our electronic security program, and I'm helping to guide the way for the rest of our teams from the safety and security side to get them kind of onboarded as we look at this new somewhat greenfield program that we're working on with our integrator of preferred technologies.
Great. Thanks, Javier. And David?
Thanks for having me. My name is David Cole. I'm a project manager for Preferred Technologies out of our Dallas office. A little backstory on PrefTech, over 20-year-old integrator, and primary focus is on Texas. We have 3 offices currently, 3 large offices, home offices in Houston. Our second office is in Austin, and our third and newest office is in Dallas. I've been with PrefTech since the opening of that office in August of 2023. And my primary focus at PrefTech is transit. So I've been in the low voltage security industry for over a decade now. Always had a lifelong passion for technology, and transit is kind of my specialty. So I focus on primarily, or actually solely, transit customers, from their command rooms to their vehicles. So all of their facilities, their platforms, stations, and transit centers, and then every vehicle they've got. So that's a little backstory on me.
Cool. All right. So in preparing for this session, we talked a little bit about the project going on down in Denton County in terms of enhancing the security system down there. So Javier, can you kind of give us an overview of what you're doing there?
Absolutely. So here at the agency, we've had a whole bunch of aging and disparate systems over the years. So I really like to call this deployment somewhat a greenfield deployment for the agency. Just starting from scratch, kind of reinventing the wheel. A while back, we had a assessment done about 2.5 years ago that came up with a budget and scope for our project. We don't have the in-house skill set or really a team today to kind of dictate or really understand what the agency needed. So what we've gone and worked on is actually replacing all of our access control systems, all our security cameras, all our audio recording systems. So we are deploying basically cameras and so fleet, uh, our operations and maintenance facilities, administrative facilities, our commuter rail platforms. They're all getting brand new systems. And then we've built out a brand new security operations center, which is going to house, the first couple new employees that we're onboarding for the monitoring of this project. The access control systems are pretty big for us. We've run around with numerous access cards on our badges. So we're trying to get rid of all those. And one of the big pushes that our CEO wanted was one badge access to all facilities. No matter where you go, you can use your badge. And if you're allowed to get in that door, you're allowed to get in, but you only have to carry one badge. So yeah, that's the overview of the main program. We're just starting fresh, keeping our passengers safe, and that's the main goal of this program.
And yeah, I know it's ongoing. Obviously, you haven't deployed all the cameras yet, et cetera. But so Armando near the end there was talking about how they have a team that watches the video feeds in their SOC. I don't know if they refer to it as a SOC, but monitors the video feeds and can respond quickly. Will there be anything like that there in terms of leveraging the surveillance that you collect?
So yeah, so to your first point, that this system is very much under deployment. We've managed to almost wrap up all of our primary administrative and operations and maintenance facilities. We don't have anybody currently working within the SOC yet. That was just stood up and finished about 6 weeks ago. But we are currently working with a security specialist, just a physical security individual who's got experience in the space, to come up with a program, policies, procedures, help us through job descriptions and staffing it. That particular organization is going to fall under the administration function of the agency. So I'm working to make sure that the millions of dollars that we're spending on technology and equipment don't just sit there collecting cobwebs in a room, right? So it's make sure they're properly utilized and we're doing the right things as far as our policies and procedures for accessing video and who can see the cameras, who should have access to what cameras, and also looking at a better idea of who should have access to what buildings and where they should be granted access to.
Right. Can you talk about how you and PrefTech have worked together? What has that relationship been like in terms of coming up with a plan for the system and then deploying it?
Yeah, so PrefTech responded to one of our requests for qualifications about 18 months ago. We started working them pretty quickly. We provided a few different vendors with the assessment that was provided by our third-party consulting firm that did the overall scope and budget for the project. So we worked hand in hand on that. I thought they had an idea of what our budget was, what we were trying to accomplish. And PrefTech really just came up with a great solution that met our budget, met our needs, met the technology requirements that we put on the assessment as well. Ultimately, with the goal of centralizing everything into one system. We didn't want, one system driving our access control system, another system running our fleet cameras, another system running our facility and commuter rail platforms. Really, really just a goal, and they were very much in line with that same program. It helped that PrefTech or Preferred Technologies has been working with some of our regional partners as well. Great references from our partners at Trinity Metro. So really working with a vendor that's got experience in the transit space, which I think is super unique. You got a bunch of vehicles going down the road, hitting potholes, bumping around, and you got basically an entire IT cabinet. My CEO likes to call our buses IT cabinets on wheels because there's so much hardware and technology that we put on those things outside of the engine and the seats and everything else, right? So really engaging with PrefTech and coming up with a collaborative solution. They listen to our feedback. They work really well with our timeline. It's hard to sometimes bring buses offline when we need them. A lot of agencies are, struggling with aging fleet, and we don't have a whole lot of buses laying around, so they work around our schedule and the timing that we'd have to make vehicles available.
Right. Yeah. So when you were talking about not having disparate or discrete systems for access, et cetera, hence the word integrator, right? So yeah, bringing it all together. So David, from your perspective as the integrator, how do you work with your public transportation partner to try to get them the best approach?
Absolutely. Well, first, I think Texas transit agencies we're lucky. They're forward focused, right? And they're also connected in a sense. So they bounce ideas off of each other and collaborate with each other. So in a sense, that's kind of where Javier said, look, we understand that there's a good design out there with one of our transit partners. We'd like to take a look at what that design is. And then we kind of reiterated on that and made the design custom to DCTA. But I think what's interesting is that all the agencies in Texas are moving towards a single pane of glass model. And so to have the systems for your vehicles and your buildings tied together, not just on the video side, but also bring in the access or LPRs if you've got those out there as well. So to have that just driven by one app is powerful. And so we love to have the customers that are all for that as well.
Cool. All right. So so I'm sure you guys have worked together a lot over the past couple of years. So how do you identify the systems and solutions that would be most effective? Is it looking at what's been effective in other systems in the area? Are you looking at something new? What have you found to be the best approach?
Sure. So for our end, and open architecture is very important. So we don't want to get the customers tied into anything unless they want to be, but we don't want to get them tied into anything that they can't expand. That's not future proof is the word that we use for it. We just want them to have a platform that they can grow with. So, and our chosen platform for that is Genetec, but we choose to have something that they can grow with, something that they can change, and something that's able to adapt to the nuances that they have as transit agencies.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry, Javier, go ahead.
No, I would say that I think it was 2022 or 2023. I went armed to the APTA, the American Public Transportation Association Transform Expo conference, which is where every bus, rail, technology, you can go see entire train sets. I think I spent an entire day going around through what felt like a mile-long hallway, kind of interviewing all the different integrators, all the different technology platforms, and really, to me, I found that a whole lot of, many of them were great at one thing. They had great fleet, platforms, but again, for a small agency and being able to tie all the systems together with a small staff and being able to kind of just cordon off those different systems and let folks have them as needed, but still monitor one platform was really important. And I found that Genetec was the main one for us that really checked all the boxes for our system. And again, PrefTech being a platinum certified partner was a huge win for us.
Mm. All right, so I'll take another step back. Even before you start designing and deploying, so what is it that was driving the security enhancements? What led to this project?
I think the honest answer was a lack of systems. A lot of our systems, a lot of our buses had aging cameras that either weren't working or that may have come with the buses 10 years ago in some cases. And just really the impression overcoming so I'm in Texas. It's hard to get people out of their cars and onto transit. That's a known thing around here. But we very much are overcoming the concern that transit isn't safe. I know that our regional partners are also working with that as well, and really, not having functional cameras on our bus fleets and missing that visibility in our on our commuter rail platforms, and even intrusions into our own OMF facilities. Those are things that we were working on, and we just couldn't identify those issues. So that was really the primary driver. The delay, I like to say sometimes, is kind of a fear of the unknown for a while. Again, with not having a true internal security department, kind of relying on local PD, to ride our system, but not really being integrated into our system. We don't have our own police force. We don't have our own security force. So there was a little bit of lack of direction until finally we determined that we needed some outside help to perform that assessment, which really kind of gave me the business plan to present to our board of directors. It's a lot of money, right? And for a small transit agency, the amount of funds required to re-outfit your entire agency is a lot. So it's hard to just go up there and ask for millions of dollars without some type of backing or proof or reason. So coming up with a need and a business plan and being able to present that to our board and get the approval with the understanding of it's really safety for our passengers, it's safety for our operators. There was a true desire for our operators to have that safety blanket, right? There's altercations on the buses, it's for their own personal safety and really even for disciplinary actions, right? There's nothing like the he said, she said situation that can arise on a bus when you've got a customer complaint and an operator complaint that doesn't quite match up. So having that ability to keep our operators safe as well is a huge need for us and really important too. I mean, I know that many other public transit agencies are dealing with this as well. There's operator shortages. And how are we going to sell, that DCTA is a safe place to work if there's no way to prove that it's a safe place to work? So those are really really big factors on that. And having live look in on the vehicles as well, having grading access to our PD and our security operations center, the ability to tap into a vehicle on the fly, super important to us as it can tie back into our CAD AVL systems and routers that are on our vehicles.
Right. All right. A lot of good stuff there. A few points that I'd like to expand on a little bit. So you mentioned the he said, she said issue. I think you mentioned in a previous conversation that you do have audio as part of the system, part of the solution.
That's correct. So we have audio on key customer interface points. So for example, our customer service counters at our downtown Denton Transit Center, on the the inside on the point of sale systems and on the outside for the customers as well, to make sure that those interactions are recorded. All of our bus and commuter rail vehicles will have that audio capability as well. And even areas that tend to sometimes be a little contentious. Sometimes there are internal operations areas that sometimes need audio monitoring. They're just high public traffic areas. So we monitor those as well. We don't have audio turned on like our internal administrative offices or just general operations facilities areas. We like to keep some privacy in the workplace, right? But high interaction points, areas that could sometimes get contentious, we have audio monitoring installed.
Right. And are there, as you're thinking about how to design the system, how to deploy it, were there certain risks, certain specific threats that you were looking to mitigate, or is it really just trying to broadly enhance security?
I think it's really trying to understand. When you don't have these security systems to begin with, you kind of don't know what you don't know. There were times where we may not know what's going on in our commuter rail platforms. They were set up initially to have cameras, but during the initial rollout of the commuter platform or the commuter rail, they just didn't deploy them at the time. So it's hard to say. From the rail platform, I guess we're fortunate that we don't have a ton of altercations and issues on our system. We are very fortunate in that sense. But I think, when we were having this prep discussion for this conversation, we did bring up the fact that there may be a rise in incidents now, but only because now we're actually seeing what's going on and we can actually react to them and help protect, what may be happening on the vehicles that we don't know today. So I think that's a big part of this as far as the need goes. And earlier I mentioned that some of our operations and maintenance facilities, these facilities tend to be in kind of remote areas, and they have gates around them and whatnot, but people do sneak in and they loiter. We've had issues with stray bullets hitting our operations and maintenance facilities. So there's a lot of things that we really needed to capture that we didn't have the ability to back then. And the local PD has sometimes asked us for footage in the past that we just don't have from our transit center. So really, compliance and safety, all those things really drove home the need for these systems.
Right. And other issue was budget. Obviously, that's something that every transit system and other vertical market as well probably is dealing with. It's a huge challenge and a perennial one. Is that something that you and David were able to work together on? How did you address the budgetary issues?
Yeah, so our assessment through our planning consultant was able to craft a really great budget for a 4-year program, just a capital project with ongoing maintenance costs associated with it. I think the best advice I can give on something like this is don't guess, don't try to go out there and go out to RFP without some type of number in your head that you know that you can spend. Um, as an agency, from a technology perspective, I typically use cooperative contracting agreements, which gives me a little bit more flexibility to sometimes share that budget with the integrators so that they can better understand it and really fit a program that fits my budget versus coming up with a program that maybe double what I expected in my budget, and then I have to start cutting corners. I'd rather just design it within budget and not waste a whole bunch of time to begin with. But yeah, the budget portion of it is difficult because it's if you don't have if you don't have that in-house knowledge set or skill set to really just draw out the number of cameras and whatnot, I think it gets hard to guess at that number. So some outside help was great for us, and I highly encourage other transit agencies to lean on their planning consultants teams to help out with that.
Right, makes sense. All right, and so you mentioned this is all pretty much all new greenfield.
Mhm.
So your operators, your employees, having cameras around is something new to them. Having cameras
Mhm.
in the stations, eventually on the buses, et cetera. What's been the reaction to all of that?
It's been mixed. A lot of our administrative staff, it's new to them to have cameras going up in hallways and near shared workspaces. So there's some hesitation, right? Like you kind of see the Pref Tech employees running around putting up cameras, and you kind of see employees just kind of staring up in the ceiling, kind of looking around to see what if they're being monitored. Nobody wants a nanny cam on them. So there were some hesitations to overcome with that. I even went as far as, when I would notice that as I was walking the hallways, if people had questions or I saw them staring at a particular camera, I'd actually invite them. I said, "Come look, I'll actually show you what this camera is looking at, so that you can feel a little bit better about without invading your privacy. We're not trying to look over your shoulder and watch your workspace. That's the last thing that we want to monitor, unless it's a high customer touch point area, right?" But from the operator perspective, operators, we had a town hall meeting with our CEO a few months or about a month ago, and they've seen all the cameras going up at our facilities, but it is a phased approach, and they said, "When are we getting cameras on our buses?" So that was a huge kind of sigh of relief for me that they really, really wanted these cameras for their safety, for the reasons that I had mentioned a little bit earlier. So operators definitely want those cameras. They understand it's for their safety, that for their protection, and again for the disciplinary factors as well. So big win with operators, I think, for retention and training. I think it's a huge win for them.
Right. All right. So one or two more questions before we get to the Q&A. But yeah, I'm assuming you're using IP cameras, everything's on the network. So how are you addressing cybersecurity?
Absolutely. From a cybersecurity standpoint, Genetec was a no-brainer. If you go onto their website, you can see the tons of cybersecurity certifications that they have, and it seems like that number is growing every day. So that was definitely a no-brainer. From a cybersecurity perspective, also getting the latest and greatest cameras and making sure that we rotate them as they age out over time. Once cameras stop getting security updates, I think it's time to probably pull them off your fleet. So having all brand new systems is great from a cybersecurity standpoint. Keeping the systems updated. Genetec has the ability to push out updates and keep cameras and everything else updated on a regular basis. So, and then from our cybersecurity, our security information and event management systems, once the system is completely deployed, we're actually going to tie in our Genetec platform into our SIM and actually ingest logs and information from that system that actually log and track changes in the Genetec platform. So we'll have eyes on the system that has eyes on our fleet passengers and whatnot. So I think it's important. It's you're introducing. There is a risk in introducing 1,000 new 1,000 new endpoints on your system. So keeping an eye on those and keeping those monitored and ingested into your cybersecurity systems is huge.
Right. Right. All right. One more question before we get to the attendee questions. But obviously it's a pretty significant project here. A lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of moving parts. So I feel like a lot of, not necessarily public transportation systems, but in certain places, say a smaller business, they might say, well, I'm going to put a camera here, put up a camera here, put up an electronic lock on the door, and that'll be the end of it. But when you have a big project like this, can you talk about the value of working with an integrator and having that good partnership?
For me, not having to guess on what systems I want, I didn't go out there and guess and say I just want access cameras, I want a Genetec platform, I want HID readers, I want Crescendo cards, right? I didn't have to guess at that. The value the integrator brings also is the regular communication that they have with the vendors and the technology vendors that are out there. I can get the latest and greatest, and I know that if I trust my integrator, they're selecting the best product, and I won't be left in the cold. If I have to deal directly with the vendor, the purchasing power I think that the integrator has with their bulk volume that they have with the vendors means a lot more than me buying 10 cameras from Access and one NVR from Genetec, right? The response is huge, and highly recommend keeping your systems, maintained and regular checkups with your integrator. Keep them in the loop. Make sure any changes go by them. If you have questions, work with them. They can also provide, training from the vendors as well. So I think it keeps us in the loop and up to date at all times. PrefTech has offered us training for our internal staff that supports our systems, our operations technology folks. So I think it's just great to have a vendor that keeps you informed, keeps you up to date. I mean, I think if it wasn't for PrefTech, I wouldn't be presenting on this web conference today. So I think it's fantastic to have an integrator, and they bring a huge value to us. And really, as mentioned earlier, having an integrator that knows transit when you're in the transit space, I think is really important. Those vehicles have a whole bunch of quirks to them, and there's some relationships that need to be built with bus OEMs as well as the local vehicles that we have today.
Right. All right. Thanks for that. So, all right. So we do have several questions from attendees, and I think in some cases you guys might have actually talked a little bit about the topic already, but I'll just go ahead and read them. So, what single pane of glass application is being used to integrate all of the different components?
Yeah, we definitely touched on that a little bit. Genetec is able to integrate access control systems. I mean, you can flash your badge at a reader, and your face will pop up on the Genetec platform, and also fire up the camera that hits that particular reader. So I mean, it's a single pane of glass there, and that's a system that we've chosen to use.
Right. All right. Beyond the immediate implementation, what defines success for this solution? What are the critical KPIs you utilize to demonstrate the real-world impact, and how do you continuously measure and track whether those results are being achieved?
That's a great question. I like to call this program kind of in its infancy today. I think we will see, like I mentioned earlier, an increase in incidents, only because we're now monitoring them in real time. So I think the decrease in those incidents over time, again, we're going to see a spike, and then I think we're going to see a drop. I think those are the critical KPIs that we're going to be looking at. Measure and track whether those impactful results are being achieved. Really, I think the utilization of the system in general is going to be the biggest thing that we're going to be working with in the beginning. Not having had a system like this, developing those policies, because really that third party assistance that we're getting, again, small agency, brand new department, you could say. I think that we're going to have some help developing what those KPIs are. I think bringing in outside help when you don't have it in-house is going to be huge. So I don't have those numbers quite yet. I don't have that quite defined. I think that'll be the result of the policies and procedures that we're going to be coming out of this next study per se.
Right. I think this question came in when I was asking about the cameras and the other security devices going in, but somebody asked if you received any pushback from unions.
No pushback from our ATU. They were on board with us. They were at the town hall meeting, and really we've received no pushback on that whatsoever. I think really there's an expectation that there should be cameras on the vehicles. I think it's rather uncommon to have a fleet that has I don't think it's uncommon to have aging systems, but I think it's uncommon to have a fleet that isn't well covered. So no pushback whatsoever that I've heard of from the operations side.
All right. An attendee asks, what is the strategy for track, platform, and tunnel safety?
Yeah, there's a lot of new technology out there for monitoring the right of way and tunnels and in our case bridges. Um, I like to call that phase two, maybe phase three of the system. That's not something that we've investigated today. That is a rather large financial ask that I'll be looking at in the future. I would love to see crossing analytics. I think that would be fantastic, better understanding the safety of certain crossings. We're always looking at our grade crossings, understanding the impact of accidents there, or watching what may happen. Maybe working with our cities to see about possibly removing those grade, and making them grade separated. So I think analytics that'll come from monitoring our crossings is going to be a next big win for us, but that's coming down the pipe.
Got it. And I think you preemptively answered this next question, but they're asking about safety systems beyond access control and cameras, other technologies that are being evaluated. I think you just addressed that one.
Yeah, and I think we touched on this a little bit yesterday, but there's analytics that we're thinking about in the future as well in future phases. So I think AI analytics on top of our cameras, or unlocking those abilities of our cameras is probably a next logical step for us. Having a small staff, I think having analytics would be fantastic. They can't watch all 500 to 700 cameras at once.
Right. Right. All right. All right. Good stuff. Those are all the questions that we received. So before we go, any closing comments from either of you gentlemen?
David?
Yeah, no, just a great conversation. Thank you for having me, and just reiterate how great a relationship we have with DCTA, and how we're honored to be able to serve them.
Great.
And likewise, thank you for having me. I always love telling DCTA's story. I like to think that we're the little agency that could. We are growing fast and growing up quickly. And PrefTech has been an amazing integrator. I work with David. I feel like David's one of my coworkers at this point. So it's been a great relationship. And thank you for having us. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. All right, so now we've come to the final presentation, and it is from Rich Sampson, Executive Director of the Southwest Transit Association. SWTA is a regional transit association serving 8 states: Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado, Kansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Texas. And Rich oversees all of the association's programs and activities, including member services, training and events, communications, and advocacy, supporting the growing investment in transit at all levels of government, and refining regulations and policy impacting transit and mobility providers. Now, the bad news is that Rich had a conflict and is not able to join the symposium. The good news is that he took the time to record his presentation for us, which we greatly appreciate. So while we obviously won't be able to have a Q&A at the end, he does provide his contact information so you can reach out to him with any inquiries that you have. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start up his recording.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining me here for this brief discussion and overview on public transit security. I'm Rich Sampson from the Southwest Transit Association, better known as SWATA, and want to thank Ronald Hawkins and the folks at the Security Industry Association for inviting me to share some thoughts with you this morning or this afternoon, and know that you have some good additional speakers from DCTA, which is right in our neck of the woods here in the SWATA Nation, along with WMATA, who will give you plenty of great specifics on how transit security is handled at their agencies, respectively. The goal here that I'll be sharing with you in the next little bit is some components that go into what makes up a transit agency security profile, some of the technologies and strategies they use, as well as kind of the structure of how the federal government and others fund public transit and the investments in security and safety programs at their agencies. And just a bit before I get into those details, is this just who we are at SWATA? We call ourselves the SWATA Nation. We represent transit agencies of all sizes across an 8-state region in the south and west portion of the country. And we do all kinds of work from training and advocacy in Washington to conferences and networking to help folks know that transit matters everywhere and especially in our part of the country. So that's just a little bit of who we are. And I'm the executive director, and I've been in the transit industry for about 20 years now, and glad to work with all our members across this region and helping them improve and have more and better transit service. So what I'll be focusing on here in the next little while is three areas. The safety of passengers and assets. So kind of making sure your journey is safe from things that happen accidentally or operationally that kind of present risks to passengers, and as well as the assets and infrastructure that a transit agency might possess. Then operational safety in terms of protecting all those folks from threats from outside, namely folks who are intent on doing ill will to folks, and how we can combat some of those threats, along with the emerging area of cybersecurity, and particularly how that plays out for transit providers. So that's where we'll be focused for the next little while here. Just some background on, if you're not particularly familiar with the way that transit industry is structured, and what's the funding and oversight parameters of various governments. Transit programs are funded through a bunch of different agencies at the federal level. They all come together, what's known as the CCAM, Coordinating Council on Access Mobility. But the point here is to demonstrate that transit providers have access and benefit from a bunch of different federal programs. Obviously, those through the Department of Transportation and the Federal Transit Administration are the focus of, and the majority of those funds, but everyone from the Department of Defense to HHS and agriculture and others fund components of getting people to places that they need to go in their communities. And all those different programs have different requirements and regulations that may impact security and safety in a number of ways. But of course, we do tend to focus on those through the Department of Transportation. And generally, when we're talking about the federal focus, it's through the Federal Transit Administration, the FTA, but transit providers, particularly those who operate rail systems, fall under the purview of the FRA. And then there's some different funding programs through the Highway Administration and some other areas too, but generally we're focusing on the work that the FTA does and their regulatory burdens and authorities that are imposed and interact with transit agencies. Kind of building on that, we look at the safety of passengers and assets. So folks that are taking transit riders and those who are employees of transit systems, how do we keep those folks safe, and what are we looking at in terms of the universe of what safety means to them and security in terms of their physical security? And generally this falls under the parameters of the National Public Transportation Safety Plan, which the FTA published in its final form in April of 2024. And there's a bit of data lag here in the data that transit agencies report, particularly related to the service changes related to COVID in 2021 and 2020 in 2020 and 2021. But if you're kind of looking at what kind of events we had in transit, you can see we had we have breakdowns of events that involve any kind of accidents in terms of moving vehicles and or people interacting with vehicles, stations, infrastructure of various kinds. And you can kind of see there was an increasing number of those right up until the onset of COVID, those falling back during that area. But we also track fatalities, which there's not a large swing in those year to year in terms of folks that are fatally that experience fatalities on transit each year. It's low 300s or upper 200s in many cases, and then a fair number of injuries. And this includes folks that were, intentionally harming themselves, and those that were accidental or not intended injuries and fatalities. Those are all included in the data that's submitted to the National Transit Database through the FTA and compiled there. And we do track those in an industry and at the federal level in terms of measuring how our different actions relate to those numbers. And for any of you that aren't particularly in-depth familiar of the different ways that we provide transit, we call different types of transit services modes, and apologies if any of you are very familiar with this being involved in the transit industry, but generally we separate out between the rail modes, so subways, light rail, commuter rail, cable cars, things that run on tracks and carry a bunch of people. Then there's what we call the fixed route bus mode, in that it's a bus or any kind of vehicle that operates on a schedule on a particular route that isn't going to change much day to day, and you're going to arrive there at a certain time, and you'll read a schedule, and you'll pay a fare, and it'll take you where you're expecting to go. There's a bunch of different subcategories under that. And then what's called the non-fixed route space. This is what people often call demand response, or lately on-demand service. It's where it used to be called dial a ride or paratransit. And paratransit is still a large component of this, is folks that schedule a trip that comes either to their residence or their office or their medical appointment and provides direct service to that individual person, and often is ride shared is to the extent possible. So the way those things, those different components of transit modes interact and their safety risks is very different among themselves. And what are we looking at in terms of measuring safety performance? I noted the injuries and the fatalities, along with safety events. That's anything where there is an event that impacts a person or a vehicle or an asset. And among all these things, we're looking at total number of these incidents, along with how often they occur based on how many miles of services being provided for that agency or that mode or that funding category. We'll talk about that a little more in a second. And the way that these are measured and collected and responded to is all established in that transportation safety plan that I mentioned a little earlier. Also want to note some trends, again, kind of in that same time frame from 2016 through 2021 in terms of transit worker fatalities, along with assaults. Assaults are also included as part of these events, these safety events that we're monitoring. And obviously the fatality rate is much lower than the assault rate, but there are things that definitely impact our ability to provide service reliably and safely for those employees of transit systems. So those, in addition to how they impact passengers, we're also looking at how they impact employees at transit agencies. And there's a bunch of different components that the FTA and others are looking at as part of this safety program. There's the guidance that is, some is included in statute by federal law through surface transportation legislation, along with safety certification programs. There's state safety oversight agencies and mechanisms to verify that transit agencies are instituting and maintaining safe operating practices. And then at each agency, all large agencies are required to file public transportation agency safety plans, what we know in the industry as PTASP. There's a size limit at which a certain size agency and smaller, those are done through the state on behalf of those agencies. But these are the components that come together: the guidance, safety training, the state oversight agencies and programs, and then the PTASP programs that combine to form the safety program across the country. I mentioned the scope at which those plans and those efforts are managed. Small transit providers, those operating in rural areas or smaller urban areas, tribal communities, things like that, work through the State Department of Transportation. And then those larger systems that are operating fixed route bus networks and or then up to rail size have different components and requirements for putting together these safety plans, and then who's responsible for maintaining, updating them, and certifying their completeness and usability at their agencies. Then smaller agencies do have the ability to opt out of the state management of that process, and they can notify their state through a process that the FTA manages. So in terms of operational safety, what are some technologies and techniques and aspects that transit agencies are paying attention to as they manage their systems and securing the safety of their passengers and employees? We're looking at a handful of different elements that I kind of grouped together that transit agencies are using, including those that provide input to me from our members in the SWATA Nation for this presentation. We kind of focus them on surveillance and monitoring, communications and response, along with intelligent infrastructure and operations, and then some other additional measures. Some things that transit agencies use in terms of surveillance and monitoring are closed caption TV cameras and other live look-in devices that are for deterrence posture, but also evidence gathering for after events. This plays a big role in risk management and insurance programs and requirements as well. So these are components of a management posture at the transit agency where they will have either live or recorded video evidence and deterrent postures on rail vehicles, stations, buses, and other kinds of infrastructure. Then agencies are also using analytics to take that video footage and identify common trends and behaviors and individuals that can be used to be proactive in response to potential threats down the road, but also helping just good management of system in terms of when a bus might be overloaded or a rail car might be overloaded. There's ways that a rail car can tell folks on the outside how full a particular rail car is before it even arrives at the station, allowing folks to disperse along the platform to a wider range. That improves safety by reducing the risk of folks getting caught indoors or taking that vehicle out of service due to a crush load situation. So these analytics are a real helpful tool lately for transit agencies to do both the safety assessment, but also the operational management side of safety programs. And then weapons detection systems. These are obviously not unique to the transit industry in very elaborate uses in other sectors of our communities, but this is becoming a more common use in technology at transit agencies. Of course, in partnership with law enforcement agencies at all kinds of levels there too. This is communications and response for emergencies is a really evolving and very encouraging set of technologies that transit agencies are using. Most larger vehicles have had emergency buttons and alarms for decades now. What's a little different now is that quick response aspect in emergency management in real time, that these new technologies, both video, audio, and other data collected in real time and conveyed to those first responders as things are going on. But there's also apps and other platforms that allow passengers to report incidents directly to a transit agency's police department. The Go Pass program through our member DART in the Dallas area, and which connects to DCTA, is a real good program through e-alerts that allows folks to report situations that they want escalated quickly, or just to report some trash on the platform type situation. So that all blends mobile communications and GPS to pinpoint locations where things are happening, and then a record keeping mechanism for follow-up responsiveness afterwards. And then real-time data monitoring to communicate to operators, supervisors, and emergency professionals all at the same time, all using common data standards, something that a lot of agencies are working with lately. Most of you will be familiar with intelligent transportation systems, and these obviously have had great deployment in other aspects of our transportation network, highways and air traffic and things like that. But incident detection, where things can be automatically triggered back to controllers and supervisors in real time in direct services in a much quicker response time. Intelligent infrastructure features that where transit vehicles can act in concert with traffic signal networks for vehicle prioritization, and allow transit agencies to be part of response times for emergencies. Things like headboards on buses that say emergency, to allow other drivers and folks on the roadway network to know that that vehicle is in an emergency situation and respond accordingly. Driver assistance systems for anti-collision avoidance, like you may see in cars that you own or rent, where drivers can be alerted to potential threats in the moving space as they're operating through visual indicators or audio warnings, things like that. Those are becoming much more common, particularly in the latest generations of buses and rail cars that are being purchased. And then contactless payment systems, obviously, primary benefit here is making an easier fare payments process for riders, but this also deters potential folks who might be planning robberies or other violent acts on transit, being located to a particular station or even a fare gate within a station helps management of events like that. But they also reduce the need to carry cash and have more advanced data protections for riders that provides a greater level of financial fiscal security for using payment services of all kinds. So it's a multi-beneficial scope of services when we're talking about contactless payment. Numerous agencies, and I'm sure folks from WMATA will share how they've moved to the next level of payment, where just using phone payments or direct credit card rather than using those systems to buy your fare card is the next iteration of advancements in fare payment. Some other technologies, use of drones to monitor infrastructure, whether that's rail lines or BRT stations or transit hubs. Drones are playing a greater role in agencies that have their own police forces or have a detachment of law enforcement working with their agency. Again, the goals here are improving overall safety, deterrence, along with response times in the situations. Technologies such as AI are adapting measurement of systems and decision making and identifying potential risks down the road, and that informs the planning process of routes and technologies and things like that. And we in the transit agency have been using mapping and GIS programs for a long time, but the incorporating of this data, not just where people live, but where safety events and threats are commonly happening, is a new layer of that data that's been going into the planning process, as well as the system design and management process at agencies. And all these factors come together, and agencies take a multifaceted look at these amongst their various operational teams in different sectors. And becoming more a risk in recent years, and there's been several high-profile attacks on transit agencies and the cybersecurity threats, locking out fare payment mechanisms and capturing rider data all present significant risks and concerns to transit agencies. Some of them have had serious consequences from these attacks. Malware and ransomware attacks, all kinds of data, both operational data and rider data, along with employees, and can lead to service disruptions or even potential fraud implications for passengers that we certainly want to avoid. Of course, most sectors have risks of phishing and social engineering that use people to consciously hand over their information, and we don't consider our industry immune from those types of threats where people are posing as our agencies and trying to get their information or the access to their financial information that way. Insider threats for folks that might have access to all this kind of data from within or tangentially from employees or other contractors, things like that. It can cause people to be denied service, and this is really important for people that might be on taking a paratransit trip or a rural transit trip to a healthcare clinic to receive dialysis treatment or chemotherapy for cancer. Those are life and death situations, and to have services denied because their allotment of fares through Medicaid transportation programs has been disrupted by a cyber attack is a very real concern in our industry, and one that even smaller providers are having to pay attention to. As you're seeing more autonomous vehicles and interactive systems and components, I mentioned the kind of the built environment acting in real time with vehicles and personnel at all times. All that can be susceptible to a coordinated attack that requires a multi-jurisdictional, multi-agency approach to head off in advance and respond to if it does occur. And then, less immediate but still significant is vulnerabilities in supply chains where crucial components, particularly in the maintenance sector of repair and upkeep of vehicles, can really present significant complications to operating good and reliable service. Been going through some of these consequences of these threats, but service disruptions, from the kind of manageable, delays of service to, compounding gridlock and individual passenger inconveniences are, just the tip of the iceberg. We're looking at compromised systems where, safety crucial components like signaling on a rail vehicle or components on a bus that, you have a battery electric bus these days, and the complete propulsion system is taken out by a coordinated attack on the battery communication software that goes back to the maintenance office. Data breaches I've touched on kind of already, and a major concern that can lead to a profound loss of trust, both if the service is denied and halted, but also individual data compromised, is a thing that can impede and erode public confidence for transit providers. And they're all, the communications folks at those agencies are well aware of these concerns as well. And then, long-lasting damage to crucial components and infrastructure has an impact just beyond that transit operation. But if we're talking about public works services and utilities, often these things are all wired and patched together in a major capital project, and they all could be susceptible through the wrong door in at any one of those agencies or jurisdictions. Some ways that transit agencies, and I'm sure this is not unique to our industry, but these are some things that we focus on, are implementing robust safety protocols that are not just a report or guidebook that is trained on once a year, but is regularly revisited and adapted and updated as events and assessments occur. Conducting assessments of vulnerabilities and updating those protocols and procedures, policies and procedures, which are kind of the bread and butter of running a good, dependable operation. The safety threats and evaluations need to be included and updated throughout the year, and then communicated to all the relevant employees of different aspects of that organization to make sure that they're aware of these new changes. Establishing a strong incident response plan and drilling on that. You know, the old saying of plan the work and then work the plan. Making sure that people have done this before so that when it happens, they can have more mental muscle memory in responding to these situations as they unfold, or identifying potential threats as they emerging, looking at trends, common behaviors, things like that. And then strategies to all these are you know, sufficient and regularly considered firewalls and intrusion detection systems to those networks and those cloud storages and other things like that. Encrypting sensitive data, and this is often done at the front end when you're installing those systems, making sure that financial safeguards are in place, but also keeping up with the best updates to those programs and making sure that they're implemented each time they come out. Segmenting parts of the networks to limit the impact if there is a malware attack or other kind of compromise to the system. Trying to keep it, if it's in fair collection, to just those components rather than spilling over to operations, signaling, safety aspects, and making sure that those areas where they touch are well safeguarded. And then I mentioned, you know, employee training and regular security drills. You know, not just the folks in the security office or the transit enforcement police folks, but throughout the organization on a cross programmatic level is really important to not just, you know, addressing security incidents, but maintaining that overall safety posture for those three aspects of transit safety: the you know, operational safety for passengers and employees as they regularly go about doing the interaction with the transit system, defending against those who are of ill will to in a physical space out in the environment, as well as those in the cyber space as well. All those components put together and are need to be an essential and regularly reviewed and incorporated aspect of transit safety. So those are my key aspects of what's involved at a very, very high level of transit safety, security, and enforcement. Obviously, there's folks, and I believe you'll be hearing some more, who are true experts in this part of our industry. We represent the totality of transit providers, and our connection with the safety part is just an element of what we do, working with our members every day in the full transit industry. I'll be glad to respond to any questions or follow-ups with any of our members that could be helpful to you. I have my email address here along with my colleague Amanda, and we'll be holding our next conference, our summer conference, along with the Louisiana State Association in New Orleans just in a couple weeks. If you're interested, we'll have a wide range of topics there, but anytime SWATA or our members can be of assistance to you and your colleagues as you might be interacting with the public transportation network, we're glad to be of support to you. So thanks for having me again today. Sorry I can't be present with you in real time, but certainly am available for follow-up as needed. So thanks again to Ronald, and wishing you the best for a great virtual event today. Thanks, and have a great summer.
All right, again, we appreciate Rich and SWATA for providing that video for us and sharing that great information. We also want to thank our other panelists, Armando, Javier, and David, for all their great work and the information they provided. Thank you to our sponsor, Preftech. Definitely check them out at preftech.com. That's Preftech with a hyphen in the middle.com. And finally, thank you to all of you for taking the time to spend part of your day with us. We hope you'll join us next month for our next Vertical Insight Symposium on K-12 security. Until then, have a great summer, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks.